Now, here's an aspect of making a pitch that a lot of people don't talk about, and I think it's quite important, and that is, how do you tell your story? Now, every person who wants to start a company, they have a valuable asset, and it's called your story. Who are you? Where did you come from? Why are you doing this? People are interested in this. People like to hear stories about you and what you're doing and how you came to be where you are today. A lot of investors like to think of themselves as investing in stories. So talk about, the story, because as Marc Andreessen put it, how well does a founder's life explain what they're doing with their company? There should be, or there almost always is, a connection to what you've experienced in your life and where you've ended up in front of this investor telling your story. So when you tell your story, you come up with anecdotes from, that an investor might think is interesting from an angle standpoint. So a company that I actually invested in is a company that the founder woke up one morning to find his first floor of his house completely flooded with water when the dishwasher in their kitchen somehow went awry and pumped water into the kitchen like all night long. And his son came up and woke him up and said, "Dad, the first floor downstairs is completely flooded." He went downstairs. Not only was the first floor flooded, but so was the entire basement. That was a major problem, which ended up, as he tried to figure out, how am I going to fix this problem? Who do I call? Where are the contractors out there that are actually available to do this? And he then created a company that enabled people to quickly find contractors to do this type of work. Now, interestingly enough, on that story, that company didn't become successful in and of itself, because the type of work that the contractors would be doing is work that most people don't normally do on a snap judgment basis. They call several contractors to come in and look at their home. They may get bids. So the nature of the product that they were building was one that said, I have an urgent requirement that needs to be fixed immediately. What that company did was they actually pivoted and then created another version of that product, which enabled people that had problems with their automobiles, whether they had disabled cars or they were locked out of their car, or perhaps they ran out of gas, or they had a flat tire. Those people have an urgent need. And so they turned that app into a roadside assistance app, which we've invested in, and they're doing very well. So that's an interesting story that's from the co-founder's true life experience. Don't make up things. Okay, that's an interesting story that I just told you about this gentleman who woke up with his house flooded. But you don't want to create stories, because people will figure out that those are not valid and they'll come back to haunt you. If you have a really complicated business when you're pitching to an investor, then focus on the problem you're solving. Don't focus too much on the complicated part of what you're talking about. And the most important thing when you're talking to an investor group is try to connect with them. Be genuine in what you're doing. Make eye-to-eye contact. Engage them, both through your eye contact and when you're talking to them. Act as if you're actually talking to them, because you are, and they will appreciate the personal nature of what you're doing. So remember the audience that you're talking to when you're making your pitch. If you're pitching media, if you happen to be at a media event and you're pitching media, the media people love human interest stories. If you're talking to a corporate group, you might want to make sure that you don't overemphasize any one person of your management team. That tends to make some corporate investors a little nervous, because they think to themselves, what if that person somehow ends up not remaining with the company for some reason or the other, and that gives them caution. So tailor your story to the audience. Remember that who you are as a person, your story, is part of your company culture, and take advantage of that. When you're talking, project the emotion and passion that drove you to do what you're doing. Because if you're not passionate about what you're doing, then why would an investor be?